Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. On this week's episode, I'll be speaking with New York serial killer Patrick Baxter. Patrick Baxter is convicted of sexually assaulting and murdering one girl and two women. The victims in this case are 14-year-old Michelle Walker, 19-year-old Patricia England, and 25-year-old Lisa Gibbons. Michelle and Patricia were raped and died of asphyxiation. Lisa Gibbons was sexually assaulted, then died after being shot in the back of the head with a sawed-off shotgun. Her purse and jewelry were taken. Patrick received a 25 to life sentence for each murder. After he was sentenced, he offered his condolences to the victim's family, but maintained that he was innocent. Here's my interview with Patrick Baxter.
An incarcerated individual at New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision.
Where were you born?
I was born in the Bronx, New York.
What was your first positive memory as a child?
I guess looking up at the, what do they call those little spinners in the crib? Or, those little carousels that babies have in their crib, playing with the elephants and the horses. I remember that.
What was your first negative memory as a child?
First negative memory? Getting pulled over by the cops. I was real young. I was about 2 years old, and my father got pulled over. We got pulled over. It was my mother, my father, and myself. We got pulled over by the cops while my father was running red lights trying to get to the hospital for the birth of my brother. I was scared a little bit, lights, cops and stuff. That's the first thing I remember negative.
Did you suffer any type of childhood abuse or trauma?
No sexual abuse, no physical abuse. Just little, whippings and beatings when you're younger, when you do something wrong, just stuff like that. But nothing crazy, nothing major, everyday kind of stuff.
How often would you get, like whippings?
When I did something wrong. I mean, it's not like my father came in and beat me because he was tired from work. No, nothing like that. Just, I did something wrong, I got a little spanking. My grandfather, everybody had a piece if I did something wrong around my grandmother, my grandfather, anybody. So.
Do you have many friends growing up?
Oh, I had a lot of friends growing up. I had plenty of friends.
What was your behavior like in school, primarily in your middle school and high school years?
Slacker, underachiever. I mean, it was, I really didn't like school that much. I liked some school, like English class and stuff, science class, but school was good. School was good. It was just easy for me to not do anything and then take the major test and pass it. So I didn't really pay too much attention in class. I didn't like that kind of stuff, sitting in class all day.
What is the extent of your education? Did you graduate high school?
Yeah, I graduated high school and some college.
What were you majoring in when you were going to college?
Business administration.
Business administration?
With a minor in accounting.
Did you engage in any type of criminal activity as a juvenile?
Yes, minor criminal. It depends on how you look at it. Minor criminal stuff, taking my aunt's car out without permission, taking my neighbor's car out without permission, eventually stole my teacher's car when I was like 12 or 13. Cars, I like to drive when I was young, so the only way to drive when you're young is to steal them.
What about after you turned 18 when it comes to criminal activity, prior to the case that landed you a 3 to 7 year sentence for auto theft? How did that auto theft conviction come about?
I stole a car and I got caught in it. I got caught in it. It wasn't fast enough to get away. Let's put it like that. The car wasn't fast enough to get away.
For that case in particular, you were eligible for parole in 2001, and in early 2000, you had some unexpected visitors show up. Tell me about that visit.
Well, I was in a medium secure facility in New York, and I was kind of expecting a visit from my family, so I figured they just kind of surprised me and came up, and I got dressed. I went down, and I saw two guys sitting there in the suits. I asked them, who are you? And they told me who they were, and that was it. That was it. I told them, I have nothing to say to you. Don't come back without a warrant. I have nothing to talk about with you.
Did they let you know at that point that they were investigating you for 3 cold case homicides?
No, they said they specified one in the beginning, And then they came back up again a second time about a year later, and then sprang another 2 on me. And I told them the same thing, why you don't come back to see me.
Did they draw your blood the first or second time that they came and saw you?
No, they didn't draw my blood until they indicted me. They indicted me for charges like probable cause, and they got a warrant from the court to forcibly take my blood because they asked to take my blood, and I told them, no, I'm not giving you anything. And they asked to take it again, and my lawyer told them no, and then after that they got a warrant to take it.
What was the grounds for the warrant so they could get a warrant to draw your blood?
Said that I was a suspect in triple homicide, in 3 murders.
Do you know what they were basing that off of at that moment in time?
That they had gotten everybody else's DNA, and I was the only one that they hadn't got, and that they made up a story saying that somebody saw me in the vicinity of one of the homicides, so I was a legitimate suspect, even though, of course, you saw me in the vicinity. I lived there, so.
Let's talk about those 3 cases in chronological order. I know we've talked previously about this, and I know that you had mentioned that you knew 2 of the 3 victims in this case.
Right.
Let's start off with talking about Michelle Walker. Did you know Michelle Walker, and if so, how did you meet her, and when did you meet her, for that matter?
Oh, I've known Michelle Walker we lived on the same block, and as kids, we all played together. She was a couple of years younger than me, so, when you're young, those couple of years make a huge difference. So she was on the periphery, but her sisters, she had 2 other sisters, and her sisters played with, all of us, and she was always there tagging along. We had tree houses and stuff like that, just kids running around the block.
How long did you know her before she went missing?
Years. I knew her for years, but she was, like I said, she was a couple of years younger, and when you're young like that, I was a couple of years older, so I really didn't pay much attention to her when we got, because she wasn't in my age range, so I didn't really pay much attention to her until I guess she went through puberty and she started looking a little bit different. And then we just ran into each other one day in the library and just started talking.
Were you guys at any point in time like romantic, hooking up, boyfriend, girlfriend?
I wouldn't say we were boyfriend, girlfriend, but we were friends. I guess you could say what the term they use today, friends with benefits. We knew each other. We were kind of like boyfriend and girlfriend, but we couldn't be boyfriend and girlfriend because I had a girlfriend and she was too young to date. And her parents really did not like me at all. I was like the bad guy in the neighborhood. Her parents did not.
You said she was too young for you to date at the time.
She was too young to date.
Did you guys still like hook up at all? Did that like deter you from doing that?
We hooked up, but it wasn't official. Like I could go over to her house and say like, hey, I'm your boyfriend. I present myself as her boyfriend because she was too young to date. She was only 14 at the time.
And I believe you were what, 17 or 18 at the time, I want to say?
I just turned 18 and she was about to turn 15.
A sample of DNA that was recovered off of Michelle's body was tested against yours, and they were a match. Did you have intercourse with Michelle on June 6, 1987, the day she was murdered?
That same day, yes. I don't know if it was June 6th or I thought it was the 17th, but if you got it down as the 6th, it's the 6th. Yes, and previously to that, too.
The day of her murder, she went to the grocery store to buy some milk and pizza in Yonkers. While she was walking home, she was on a popular walking trail, but never made it home. It was determined that she was sexually assaulted and asphyxiated. Do you remember the last time that you had seen her alive?
Oh, earlier that afternoon, earlier that day. Earlier that day, she came by my house earlier that day in the afternoon.
Do you remember your very last exchange with her when you last saw her alive?
Oh yeah, I remember it. Yeah, I remember it. Hanging out, watching a little TV, just I guess what you call making out, kissing each other, and eventually it led to something else. But that was the last time I saw her when she left out to go down to the store to get the pizza and the milk.
After you had last seen her, did anything run through your mind? You obviously didn't see her after that. Did you wonder where she was? Did you know that she was murdered? Do you think maybe she ran away or something of the sort?
No, I didn't find out that she was murdered until the next day. Till the next evening, actually, I didn't find out that she was murdered. I drove by her house, and there were just a bunch of people, outside, like a vigil. A bunch of kids from school, and I pulled over and asked, what's going on, and somebody told me, and that's how I found out she was deceased.
Did you ever let police know that you had been with her like the previous day?
I never spoke with the police at all. Never.
Did you ever have any interactions with her family or anything after her death?
Well, just a phone call, conveying my condolences, as one of her friends. But other than that, no, no going over, sitting down, bringing, food as people typically do. Nothing like that. Too young at that age.
Being that you were friends with her, what do you think happened?
I think that she ran into a bunch of girls that she had previously been having fights with, and they caught her. They caught her on her way home. They used the same path home. These particular girls lived in a group home that was nearby, and she was having problems. Well, she had a lot of, I wouldn't say she had a lot of problems with a lot of people, but they were, at that age, girls tend to be very picky and jealous of each other, and they were jealous of her because she dressed nice and she was pretty. And, she really didn't talk to people that much. She was quiet until you got to know her, and then, she would open up a little bit. So I'm thinking that maybe she ran into one of the girls that she had an argument or a fight with previous, and they got her. And I don't think at that age anybody intentionally kills anybody, but maybe I don't know. Maybe they got into a fight or something. There was evidence on her that she had a fight with someone.
Let's talk about case number 2. On New Year's Day that same year, 19-year-old Patricia England went missing after she went to go visit a friend. Her frozen body was discovered 2 months later. And Greenberg, she was also sexually assaulted and asphyxiated like Michelle Walker was. Your DNA was also found at that scene, which would later on be tested when DNA technology became a thing. Did you know Patricia as well? And if so, when did you meet her? And where did you meet her, for that matter?
Oh, I knew Patricia for years. I just want to clear one thing up first. She was not strangled. She was not asphyxiated. There is no cause of death as when it comes to her. When it comes to her death, there is no cause of death. Medical examiner determined the cause and manner of death to be undetermined.
That's interesting.
Right, that is interesting. That is very interesting, right.
So how and when did you meet her?
Oh, this was 88. I probably met her about 4 years previous. She was one of my friend's girlfriends.
Was that just a strictly friend thing, or were you guys hooking up from time to time as well?
That was very rare with me and her. It was more friend thing than anything hooking up. Occasionally a hookup, but nothing, constant. It got more where we hooked up more in maybe the last year of her life than the previous years.
Do you remember if you two had sex the day that she was murdered, being that your DNA was found on her body?
Yes. New Year's Eve of New Year's Eve of 87 to 88. So, yes, that night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
And is that when you last saw her alive?
Yes, that's when she was last alive.
When did you find out about her death?
Well, I knew immediately. I knew she was passed when she passed. Maybe 5-10 minutes.
You're talking like 5-10 minutes after she passed away. You knew?
Yes, I knew.
How did you know so quick?
Well, I used to be a lifeguard. I did some lifeguarding in my past, and I was trained in CPR and stuff like that. And I mean, no pulse, no heartbeat, no anything, no movement. Still cold. Cooler to the touch than normal person would be. A living person would be.
Let's talk about the third case. On July 17th, 1990, 25-year-old Lisa Gibbons was on her way back to work, and she was attacked near a train station. She was also sexually assaulted. Then she was shot in the back of the head with a sawed-off shotgun, and her murderer made off with her jewelry and purse. DNA recovered at the scene would later be traced back to you using DNA technology. Did you also know Lisa?
No, nothing at all about Lisa. Never knew Lisa, never saw Lisa. There are a lot of issues in Lisa's case, but no, I never knew Lisa.
You said that there was a lot of issues in her case. Can you break those down for me?
Sure, I can. Let's start with, the main issue is that a serial killer, somebody that was actually a serial killer, confessed to her murder. He confessed to everything. He confessed to the murder, the sexual assault. he confessed to it all, and it was backed up by what was there at the crime scene. The district attorney in this particular case and the medical examiner and the detective on the case, after that person confessed to it, all agreed that this person gave facts that was not known to the public, that was not leaked to the public, and that this person could have only known this by firsthand knowledge of the homicide from being there at the scene. They were about to charge him with it, and then they take a DNA test, and they said his DNA didn't match. However, they said that the DNA from Lisa matched somebody else, one of her ex-boyfriends. So they arrest the ex-boyfriend. I guess he gets a DNA expert and is determined that his DNA actually doesn't match. And then they take my DNA. Now, they say my DNA matches. However, my DNA is impossible to match because I have a whole different blood type than the suspect in that case. There was no DNA technology at that time, so they used blood typing. And the blood typing, when it was sent to the FBI offices down in Quantico, came back as a blood type B secretor status. And I am an O negative non-secretor status. Totally different. Totally different. They can't be confused. DNA, it's possible for DNA can be confused under the right circumstances, or if you test suspect centric, like you know who you're trying to get for this. So, DNA can match. It's not unheard of for DNA to be. That's why they don't give. That's why they never say yes DNA. Say 99% accuracy. Well, that 0.1% is, can be a mistake or it doesn't actually match. I just fit within the range of it. However, the blood typing and the secretor status should have separated me from that crime. At trial, after my lawyer brought it up that it was impossible for my DNA to match this, the prosecutor put back an expert back on the stand saying, "Oh, well, it's possible that the sample was contaminated." Well, yes, it's possible it could have been contaminated. However, this sample wasn't because bacteria has its own DNA signature, which is unlike anything human. So you would have known off the top that the DNA was bacterially affected. It would, you would have known that off the top.
And the inmate you're referring to, the serial killer, is Stephen Casler, that's since passed away.
Yeah, I think he committed suicide in like 2017 or something like that. But yes, he confessed to this, and he's been convicted and confessed to multiple homicides in multiple states. He was doing time in Ohio for multiple murders. He had homicides in Louisiana for multiple murders. He had homicides in other states for multiple murders. He confessed to it and gave enough specifics for, like I said previously, for the district attorney and for the medical examiner and the detective to agree, yes, this guy was he was there. He was there.
And there's actual audio recordings of this, correct, in evidence?
Yes. Yes, there's audio recordings. There are paper transcripts of it. There are plenty of them. I believe you have in possession one of the determining the results of the meeting between the district attorney and the medical examiner. I believe that you have in your possession, so you could see for yourself. Did
you yourself have any interaction with him or his legal team or anything like that when talking about the confession and coming to court and so on and so forth?
No, this was all prior to me even being a suspect. They exhumed, I guess, his buddy, because they figured his buddy was with him and they wanted to test his DNA, so they exhumed his buddy prior to this. They were investigating him for probably up to a year, and they were about to bring charges, and the detective said the district attorney wanted to go another way. So that's when it stopped with him. Now, at my trial, he offered to come testify at my trial. Me and my lawyer, we put him down as a witness, and they extradited him up from Ohio to come testify at my trial. And on his day for appearance, he never showed up. They said he refused to come to court. Later found out from Casler's ex-wife that they came to him and they threatened him with sending him to Louisiana if he testified on my behalf. So that's why he didn't show up for court that day. He was scared of being sent back to Louisiana, where he was facing the death penalty and one of the most notorious jails in the country. So he was not trying to go back there, and that's why he did not show up for court that day. So all his testimony, all his recordings, all his statements could never be brought into evidence because they were hearsay at that point without that person testifying. So the jury never heard it.
So when you were eventually questioned about the third homicide, do you remember telling officers where your whereabouts were on July 17th of 1990?
No, I never spoke to them about it. I told them to go screw themselves when they came to interview me. I have nothing to say to them. I never said anything about any of this to any law enforcement, ever. Never spoke to them one bit.
How did it make you feel when they first came to you with this, talking about 3 bodies?
I was, I was just like, they're out of their mind. They'll get it straight. They're out of their mind. It has nothing to do with me. The cops had already attempted to question me the cops attempted to question me on the first one, Michelle Walker, but I was a minor, so my parents spoke up for me and told her I was in the house at the time. I was in the house at the time that her murder occurred. Had an alibi for that time. I spoke to the detective one time about not Lisa Gibbons, Patricia Anglin. I spoke to them one time about her. They came to visit me at my work. They were speaking to everybody. She knew all her friends and everything. And I told them the last time I had seen her, we were at a party. That was it. That was my own statement to them. That was it. I had nothing else to say to them. Everybody else told them basically the same thing.
When they first came to see you, did you think maybe they had the wrong Patrick Baxter? Perhaps this was a mistake, or, eventually this would all be cleared up?
I didn't think they had the wrong person because, it was. I knew both of them, Michelle and Patricia. I knew both of them, so I didn't think they had the wrong person. They were questioning everybody at the time, so I didn't even think anything. I just had nothing to say to the cops. I was just anti-cops from the start. Never had anything to say to them about anything. Never wanted to talk to them.
While you're sitting in prison for auto theft, you're charged with 3 rapes and homicides. What was that process like for you, knowing you were about to be, released from prison in the next 2 years, being charged with these 3 high-profile cases?
Terrible. It's terrible. It's like I don't know anything worse than that. That's been my worst experience in my life. I don't know anything else worse than that. As far as nothing worse than that has happened to me. That's the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. So it's an ongoing nightmare that's been going on for the past 20-something years, 20 years, 26 years.
Did you immediately get transferred to county jail after you were charged, or were you held in the prison?
Well, I was sent to a different prison, a more secure prison. I was in like a medium prison with like 1 fence at that time, but with charges like that, your classification goes up. So I was sent back to a maximum security prison.
Did the other inmates at the time know what you were on trial for?
Yeah.
What did the trial look like to you at the time?
Well, of course, I thought we were going to win based off of my lawyer's strategy. He said we're gonna stick to the big stuff. The big stuff being that my case is one of those funny cases. No eyewitnesses, no murder weapon, no kind of statements. So they were just going basically off of the biological evidence. That's the only thing that they say connects me to the crime. It's a biological evidence, nothing else. So from that standpoint, my blood was different from the blood that they had. That they already had somebody they picked up with 99.9% accuracy that it was his. So knew that the serial killer already confessing to the crime, and then the authorities, agreeing on what he described to them happened. So I was, I thought it was a big show. I'd never been in that much trouble in my life, so I thought it would all work out. It all works out in the end. This didn't happen to work out, though, so.
In 2002, you were convicted of the 3 homicides and sentenced to 25 to life for each crime, which is to be served consecutively. How did you feel when you were handed down each sentence in your cases?
It was terrifying. There's no other word to describe it but terrifying from my point of view. I'm in here. That's forever in here. The longest I had done prior to that was maybe a year, prior to being handed that much time. Maybe a year in the county jail before, stuff like that. I've never been away for any significant amount of time.
You've been incarcerated going on 26 years now. What does an average day consist of for you?
At this point, nothing besides just laying around all day doing nothing. I used to have a job in the food service industry. I no longer have that job in there. They said my classification's too high all of a sudden to have that job. So they basically got me hanging around and just going to rec for 2 hours a day. That's it.
Do you work on your case at all, or help other people, or do you just basically hang out, watch TV, and try to pass the time?
Well, there's really nothing for me to work on my case. I've done everything that I could possibly do with it. It's like it's in the court's hands now. My issue with my case has really nothing to do with the issues that the case contains itself. It's getting somebody to pay attention to the issues, you know?
You don't have counsel then currently?
No, I don't have any counsel. I haven't had counsel since 2002. Yeah, 2002. Everything I do myself. You know, it's been that much time where I actually had to go and learn the law. I had to actually start at the beginning. I asked somebody to help me earlier on in my time. You know, I got this issue. What do I do? And the guy gave me some good advice, which was overwhelming at the time. He said, "Hey, man, you can't rely on anybody else. You got to go look at it yourself." I said, "Well, where do I start?" He said, "At the very beginning." And he showed me where the law book started, and I read them on through. And I've taken law classes here. You know, I have you know, I can work as a law library clerk, which takes a certificate to do that because you have to know what you're doing. I already have 2 of those, so I know what I'm doing. Basically, I know what I'm doing myself. You know.
How does prison politics work in the prison that you're in? I know certain states differ. Do gangs run the phone schedule, yard schedule, shower schedule, etc.?
No, they phones, yes. Phones, yes. All the other stuff, no. And I stay out of the politics. I'm not a politic guy. You know, I see guys from around my area, and I come in and I say hello and keep it moving. I don't participate in the politics, but the politics is where all the trouble originates from. So I stay away from the politics.
So you've always stayed away from the gangs and stuff?
Never been involved in any gang. Never been involved in any group. I think I told you earlier on in the conversation, my father instilled in me, you have to learn, you have to be on your own. You know, this was instilled from a young age on how to, he was a military man, on how to, you know, stay alive on your own, to stand on your own. And, you know, if you can't stand on your own, you know, you're less of a man than kind of to me, you know what I mean? You're not the same. I understand everybody's not the same years, but I've never been made from that cloth. I've always stood on my own, and that's it.
Speaking of family, are you still pretty close with your family since the 2002 convictions?
Well, my immediate family, my mother and his mother, yeah. But that's it. Everybody else is pretty much gone or deceased by now. My father died in 2006, so just us, basically us 4.
Have you been diagnosed with any type of mental illness?
No. I've seen a couple of psychiatrists. One of my earlier lawyers. Well, you know, let's just see what's going on with your cognitive and all your stuff. You know, I saw a psychiatrist, and psychiatrist, there's nothing wrong with you. He said the only thing that I can see wrong with you is that you're paranoid, but that's understandable. Nothing wrong with me.
In the current institution you're in right now, are you treated by any other inmates, being the high-profile prisoner, a serial killer?
Yeah, they know. Yeah, everybody knows. I've been around for a while. You know, it's kind of like a small little, you know, it's like a microcosm of society. It's, you know, the prison population is only so big, and I've been in for a lot of years, and I've seen guys go home and guys come back, and there are a lot of guys who have been here with me through the whole thing. So, jail to jail, but you're still bumping the same. There's not a jail in this state I can't go to without knowing people there. I've been around that long, and so, you know, you pretty much, some people. Like I said earlier, we're past that point now. Now we're doing time. It's not, and I've had a 26-year track record in here, the same way you would have in the street. I've been in jail long as I've been in the street, so I have a track record, and everybody knows that track record already. So I'm good.
Since the pandemic started last March, have you been able to avoid contracting COVID-19?
Yes, I've avoided it, but you know, I went through some other things. I went through a bigger medical in October during the COVID crisis here. I had a brain aneurysm and actually died for a couple of minutes in flight to the hospital. And so I had bigger concerns on my mind. I just narrowly escaped death. And you know, and I get to the hospital and you know, when the doctors and everything come, hey, what was this caused by? You know, I didn't have high blood pressure. I'm not out of shape. Actually, I'm in pretty good shape. And, you know, what is this caused by? We can't find any reason physiologically why this happened. So talking to the doctor a few more days, they wrote that as a stress-related brain aneurysm brought on by stress. And I have been stressing a lot, with the COVID stuff going on. I changed all the schedules in here with my motion before the appellate division in New York State. My mother's getting older, and life is going by, and I'm not there, and those things add up. And I'm a stressful type person anyway. You might not see it on the outside, but I stress a lot on the inside.
Before we conclude this interview, is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
Well, yeah, there is. Like beside the, I remember we talked about the basic charges on how the district attorney brought them up, and I remember I told you earlier on, in order to see this thing clearly, like in order to see things clearly, they have to be looked at in their own individual capacity. Things become a lot clearer at that point. Like I said earlier, the prosecutor in their earlier papers said that, on their own, these cases amount to nothing, but, when you put them together, they form a picture. Now, you put anything together, they form a picture. I had one juror in my trial say that, during jury voir dire, when jury's being picked, Your Honor, I'm of the belief where there's smoke, there's fire. It's just that there's too many charges here for me. You're telling me this man committed 3 assaults and 3 homicides, then I'm more of the bent to believe you saying that based on the number of homicides he's here on trial for. So, people have their, preconceived beliefs when they see everything in its totality, but when you look at them on their own, they're real shaky. Let's just put it that way. One of the issues I have in the brief I brought up, like for instance, is one of the issues is a defective indictment, which is in New York. You have a defective indictment. All the charges have to amount to the elements of the charge itself. In Patricia England's case, for example, there is no finding of death. The medical examiner went over the homicide. There are no, the body didn't go through any trauma. There was no trauma to the genitalia. There was no final cause of death. The cause and manner of death remains undetermined. So in this particular issue that I have before the court right now is, New York state law specifically states in order to convict somebody of homicide, you must have causation or proof that that person forged a link in the chain of events that brought upon that person's death. So my question has always been, since trial ended, was, if you can't say how I killed the person, then how could you say I killed him? That's basic. I figured that would be basic common sense. And the medical examiner that testified at trial, it was not the medical examiner that did the autopsy, which one of the courts, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, has just determined that, a doctor can't do that. If he did not conduct the autopsy, he cannot come to court to testify about the autopsy results. The person who actually conducted the autopsy must come to court and testify. And my lawyer told me earlier on in the case that that's not going to happen because they want this guy to go against his findings, and there's no grounds for him to go against his findings. The autopsy report is plain and clear. There was no strangulation. The medical examiner that got on the stand opined that, in his opinion, absent bullet wounds and stab wounds and signs of poison, that he would have to say that it's a strangulation, even though there were no grounds to say it was a strangulation. All the signs of strangulation were not present in the body, no petechiae in the eyes, no petechiae in the brain, no petechiae in the lungs, none of these things that signal strangulation.
We have 1 minute left.
So that's an issue in that particular case. And the issue of Michelle Walker's case, there's a whole bunch of time that she's unaccounted for. Of course, the prosecutor tried to narrow the times. You still got an hour and 45 minutes that she was unaccounted for on a 15-minute walk. Michelle Walker, continued with Michelle Walker. There was a whole bunch of time that she was missing. Now, everything that I'm saying is not new. It's not new. This is all stuff that's been contained in the original criminal file, or original police file since the very beginning. All right? My lawyer even knew. I spoke to my lawyer. My lawyer already knew, but he just advised that his path was the right path. So don't say anything about anything. They're not going to sit there and try to decipher 3 different cases. The jury is not going to be able to follow that. So we'll just stick with the strongest issue, which is the medical, which is that your DNA doesn't match. Now, with Michelle Walker, back to Michelle Walker, she was missing for an hour and 45 minutes on a walk that takes no longer than 10 minutes. One way, 10 minutes back, 10 minutes at the store. So that's a half an hour total. She's going for an hour and 45 minutes. Everybody on the block, all all the parents, everybody knew Michelle, everybody knows everybody on the block. Nobody saw her. She was missing for that amount of time. So, like I said, it's all contained in the original case file. There was a mysterious person that used to pick her up from school, two different cars. I think I said this earlier on, and I'm not sure. Two different cars, one dark colored, one white, that fit the descriptions of the cars registered to me and my we weren't able to find. She used to wear somebody's chain to school with an initial on it. They weren't able to find that person. That chain was mine that she had on. I mean, I have pictures with that chain on. So them trying to say that we were strangers and all that stuff, prosecution did. It's not the first time the prosecution, this particular prosecutor has done this, which is, it was under Janine Pirro's prosecutor office. And Jeffrey Deskovic case, for example. Jeffrey Deskovic did 16 years for a rape murder that he never did. Prosecutor, same medical department. And in his civil case, where they awarded him, when he ultimately got awarded 53 for wrongful conviction, was that they found that the prosecutor and the medical examiner conspired to make the medical examiner's testimony, to make the medical examiner's testimony more damning to Deskovic when it wasn't. He twisted his story up, and he got the man convicted. That's what they do in Westchester County. That's one of the things that they do. And like I told you, those are the two that I know. Like in the third one, Lisa Gibbons case, I have nothing to say about Lisa Gibbons because I don't know Lisa, never knew her personally. One of my friends, the prosecutor brought in one of my best friend at that time, my best friend, and to testify, that we knew the area. We used to hang out nearby. There was a park nearby with a basketball hoop, and we used to sit there and drink, smoke a little weed. But I mean, so little things like this, they can, they put in the jury's head, he knows the area, so he could have been over there. Well, there's not a street in Westchester County that you can't put me in that I haven't been on at one time or another. That's where I came up and grew up at. There's no street that you can't say I've been on in that area. So you get somebody coming in, there's a murder in anywhere. Let's say anywhere in Westchester. Yeah, I've been on that street. You could bring somebody in to say, yes, I've been on that street. So, they did a lot of things like that. Saying I climbed out of my bedroom window, so my alibi might not be good because my bedroom window was ground floor level. Our apartment was ground floor level with the parking lot right in the back. So, that's easy to get out of. All the attention now is on police misconduct in the street, the way they approach people, the way they handle the African American community. I just want everybody to know that stuff's been going on since the mid-'90s. The tough on crime legislation. We'll just snatch them all up, we'll arrest them, and let the pieces fall where they may. Now, a lot of prosecutors at that time were just, their main thing was convictions. They weren't trying to get to the bottom of anything. It wasn't truth. Let's see if we can get a conviction to bring our numbers up. And that's what they were doing at the time. Justice wasn't done. Justice was never served on a bunch of those cases, especially from New York at that time, because we had a real aggressive mayor and a real aggressive governor, Pataki, who was just get them all, and let the pieces fall where they may. So a lot of these cases, the same injustice as people have been seeing on the street for the past year and a half. This stuff is definitely going on in the prison system still. That hasn't reached into the prison system on how the prison system operates, and it hasn't taken into account all the people that were convicted in the 90s and the early 2000s with this tough on crime stuff, just pushing through convictions. Like I said before, I'm no angel. I'm definitely no angel, but murder and assaulting women, I think it's just so far beyond the pale that it's just shocking. Sometimes I gotta separate myself from the charges and be like, this is just crazy. So I just want to let everybody know that, to continue to revamp the criminal justice system, because it goes a lot deeper than just the police on the street.
That was my interview with New York serial killer Patrick Baxter. If you haven't subscribed to my Patreon, go check it out, patreon.com/unforbidden-truth. You can get access to additional interviews, extra content, access to a virtual true crime gallery, and much more. Thank you for listening.